Manager for Education and Outreach at CAQH Core. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to our Voluntary Core Certification Basics webinar. I'd like to mention a few logistical items. You can download a copy of today's presentation from the caqh.org website after the end of the session. To do so, navigate to the Core pull-down menu at the top of the caqh.org welcome screen and select the Core Education Events page. A link to the PDF version of the presentation can be found under the listing for today's webinar. On this slide, you can see a screenshot of the Attendee GoToWebinar dashboard. When joining today's session, it's possible you may have joined the audio portion of the webinar using your computer speakers by default. If possible, we would prefer you to join the webinar audio by telephone. To do this, please select the telephone button in the audio panel of your dashboard, and the dial-in information will be displayed. Make sure you enter your audio PIN, which is found under your dial-in information. We will save time at the end of today's program dedicated to responding to your questions. You're encouraged to submit questions at any time during this webinar by typing them into the questions panel on your dashboard. We would like to thank our guest speakers and panelists from EdFX, Ashish Gandhi, Sergio Rata, and Christina Puskas. Today, we will start off with two presentations by core staff on core certification. The first one setting the stage for why core certification can lead to many benefits, and the second will walk you through the certification process as well as resources available to you free of charge. Then we will have our guest speaker from EdFX walk us through their testing portal, which will give those of you in the audience thinking of or in the process of core certification a leg up to ensure your success. And then we will engage with our speakers as well as some guest panelists from EdFX in a conversation where we walk through the top certification challenges and some other topics of interest. So lots to cover today. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, CAQH Core Manager, Taha Anjarwala, to join us. Taha?
Thanks for the introduction, Jessica. So first, as Jessica mentioned, I'll be talking about kind of an overview of the core certification program and kind of why so many organizations in the industry kind of benefit from the certification. So kind of business cases to why they chose to become certified. So next slide. So as a program, voluntary core certification is really the gold standard and how a certification should be developed and administered. So this slide outlines the elements that make up the kind of checks and balances that make the certification program so unique. First, certification the program is developed by industry, for industry, through a transparent multi-stakeholder process. Second, the certification program not only requires adherence at a policy level, but also requires organizations to validate conformance via system-based testing through a third-party vendor. And third, CORE serves as a nonprofit, neutral administrator of the program, reviewing and validating those test results by the third party and checking for trading partner dependencies and conducting a comprehensive assessment before awarding the core seal. So these three elements are the foundation as to why the certification program is the gold standard in the industry. Next slide. So on this slide, so we're happy to announce that we awarded a total of 320 core seals since the core certification program started. Most recent certifications include Boston Medical Center Health Net Plan, Cal Optima, which is a Medi-Cal plan, and two federal employee benefit plans, the National Association of Letter Carriers and the Government Employee Health Association. So in looking at the impact core certification has on our nation's healthcare system and looking to measure the amount of covered lives that benefit from certification, the infograph on the screen shows that for phases 1 and 2, which cover the eligibility and claim status transactions, about 76% of the commercially insured and 44% of the publicly insured are covered by certified health plans. And for phase 3, we see a trend that there's a growing adoption in both the commercially and publicly insured markets. So, what does this data tell us? The data reflects the momentum of certifications in the industry and the increased commitment and mounting success across the organizations in healthcare to effectively share electronic data in secure and meaningful ways. So looking, next slide please. So looking at, that core certification coverage and, how certification is continuing to grow in the marketplace, certified entities should be experiencing the benefits afforded by the use of electronic transactions and operating rules. And according to findings by the CAQH index, it's estimated that about $9.4 billion can be saved through the use of eligibility, claim status, electronic fund transfer, remittance advice, claim submission, and prior authorization transactions, in which these transactions are all covered by the operating rules for phases 1 through 4. So this $9.4 billion is an impressive number and represents savings related only to direct labor cost. So as more organizations across the industry transition to fully electronic transactions and adopt operating rules to experience administrative efficiencies, there's more potential for this cost savings to be realized. Next slide, please. So this slide, I just reviewed the potential savings opportunities at large for the industry. This slide kind of helps point out and portray the potential savings and opportunities at an organizational level for those that choose to adopt and implement the operating rules. So for providers, for example, utilization of the eligibility transaction can save an average of $3.59 per transaction, with studies showing that it can take approximately 7 minutes or less to perform a transaction versus performing an eligibility check over phone. So if you think about how many eligibility verifications, a hospital or maybe your organization may perform on a daily basis, and adding all those over the course of the year, that could be the potential for a great cost savings. Similarly, providers who have switched to the use of the electronic prior authorization transactions have saved an average of $5.61 per transaction, and reducing the amount of time over from electronic to over the phone by 14 minutes. So core certification helps to fortify your organization's position and commitment to implementing the operating rules and transactions they support. As reports from IBM and the CAQH index show, there's significant potential for return on investment when you assure your systems conform to the operating rules. So next slide. This slide kind of highlights the different testimonials we've received from the certified organizations and their perspectives in the industry. So health plans, providers, clearinghouses, they have all indicated the value add for certification. These testimonials help reinforce the many benefits that organizations experience when achieving certification, from being seen as industry leaders in administrative simplification efforts to contributing to build a more efficient healthcare system for everyone. So the focus and resources can be devoted to the delivery of care to their members. I won't read through the testimonials, but offline you can read through what others are saying about core certification. So next slide, please. Each phase of the operating rules have unique, tangible benefits that aid in improving business processes for healthcare. Certification helps to call out and make those benefits transparent to those organizations in the marketplace that are able to deliver and maximize on each of these benefits. Use of the operating rules accelerates the delivery, accessibility, and availability of critical information, which in return provides business benefits to those leveraging the rules. Examples of these benefits include improvements in revenue cycle management, such as the ability to quickly check patients and eligibility prior to a visit, faster patient registration, and the ability to collect those patient financials at the time of service versus afterwards, which can be harder to manage. Reducing reductions in provider account receivables, which help organizations build and gain operational efficiencies and help to build administrative savings, and also improve cash flow via expedited payment and remittance reconciliation through the receipt of electronic payments. So there are lots of many tangible benefits, as you can see, with not only implementation of operating rules, but certification, which can help kind of showcase your organization as in the marketplace as able to deliver on these benefits. The next slide, please. So as I just talked about some of those tangible benefits that organizations can experience with certification, I'm going to now move into the other type of benefits that help make core certification stand out. The certification program is a multi-stakeholder, collaborative, and industry-driven effort that provides benefits from both an industry and organizational perspective. From an industry perspective, the elements of the certification program, which are the actual requirements that are necessary for organization to demonstrate and test conformance with the operating rules, which are the actual test questions, policies, and forms, were developed by a group of industry stakeholder representatives through a transparent process. These requirements of the program were put together through the same review and voting process as the operating rules were, so that is that they were voted on by organizations that actually conduct the transactions. So core certification is the industry deciding for itself what conformance and the operating rules actually mean. And I'll be reviewing kind of more organizational specific benefits over the next few slides. One great benefit of the certification program is that each phase of certification builds off the other. So as you implement and certify on one phase of the operating rules, you can leverage on your past efforts and to implement and certify on future phases of the operating rules. Each phase of the operating rules, phases 1 through 4, shares a common set of infrastructure requirements that apply across each transaction, including requirements around connectivity, security, response time, system availability, your companion guides, and the use of acknowledgments. Thus, if you can implement one phase, you've already created a foundation that will help streamline implementation of subsequent phases. Similarly, the process for certification is standardized across each phase, from system evaluation to the pledge, testing, and our application review cycle. If you completed the process for phase 1, the same steps apply for phases 2, 3, and 4. We try to make it easy and comprehensive at the same time. So next slide, please. Another key benefit that we hear from organizations as to why pursue certification is conformance. Many of the reasons why an entity gets certified is based on the idea that there is an objective third-party testing and subsequently proving that whether or not your organization are meeting the operating rules the way they're meant to be used. So it's like using TurboTax, going to H&R Block, or going to a third-party accountant to help you with your taxes. It's good practice to find somebody from outside of your organization to kind of check your work to making sure that you did it right. And core certification is that kind of check for the operating rules and underlying standards. Almost every entity pursuing certification states that certification testing and the issuance of the core seal gives their organizations assurance that they comply with the federally mandated operating rules, and it also helps to allow that their organizations feel confident in the event of an audit. So not only is core certification great for demonstrating and validating compliance and conformance to the operating rules, certification also helps organizations establish themselves as leaders in the marketplace through public demonstration of commitment with administrative simplification efforts, as well as showcasing their organization's ability to push their trading partners to comply with the operating rules, ensuring that there's optimal flow of data across the exchange of a transaction. Lastly, another key benefit that I'll talk about is the certification program offers numerous tools and resources to help organizations achieve certification. There are planning guides, over several hundred FAQs, interactive learning modules. We even have one-on-one consults with core staff and much more resources that are available. And the best part about all of this is that these are all available for free. So free, can't beat that. Next slide, please. So I talked about several of the key benefits, and another important benefit that the program offers is kind of our enforcement policy. And as part of our outreach efforts for the year, we're working to build industry awareness of this certification enforcement policy. And this is due to the fact that there is a large footprint of certified entities now in the marketplace, and organizations both upstream and downstream should be seeing the benefits afforded by the operating rules. And we want to ensure that there is ongoing monitoring of compliance throughout the industry by all trading partners. So as a component of certification, the enforcement policy has always existed, and certified entities must adhere to these policies in addition to the operating rule and testing requirements in order to become certified. The enforcement policy applies to any core certified entity, including certified health plans, vendors, clearinghouse, and providers. Similarly, the operating rules and the certification policy were developed by core participants, highlighting this policy was developed by industry for industry. And further, the policy also allows a complaint-driven and collaborative process which focuses on remediating issues versus issuing penalties. The policy takes a self-policing and self-reporting approach, empowering the industry to ensure that they are able to receive and maximize benefits afforded by the operating rules. This approach allows end-to-end monitoring of conformance testing across all trading partners to help identify gaps within the healthcare system. If you believe one of your training partners is non-compliant with these operating rules, we have several resources available to help you out, and I'll go deeper dive into those resources later on in the presentation today. So moving on to the next slide. This slide helps illustrate the components and the life cycle of the certification program. As an organization goes through the certification process, the first step is to commit and sign the core pledge. And then afterwards, the organization then goes through a vigorous testing and application process, which is conducted by a third-party testing vendor. And we'll hear more about that testing process from Edifex later today. And then afterwards, CORE serves as a neutral administrator to award the CORE seal. And I'll be walking through you kind of this process more in detail in a little bit. So let's move on to the next, I believe, our next polling question.
Thank you, Taha. So let's take a first polling question. I'll read the question, and this is a select all and apply. So the question is, for what reason would your organization become CORE certified? And you have 5 options. First option is demonstrate conformance with the operating rules. Second option is improved business processes leading to greater efficiencies for our customers, such as requires real-time patient financials for providers. The third option is provides an objective assessment of our systems through a use of a third-party tester, CORE authorized, and an industry-supported certification organization, CAQH CORE. The fourth option is all of the above, and the fifth option is other. And if you can put in the questions panel what that other might be, we would greatly appreciate it. So let's start the polling. Let's launch the poll, and the answers there are abbreviated, so hopefully they match with what I described a few seconds ago. So let's just take a couple more seconds and see what the majority of our audience is thinking at the moment. And then after we're done with this polling, I may ask Taha just to give us some observations on the results, and then we'll move on with our next presentation. So let's give this 5 more seconds. And this information is really helpful for us as we continue to develop programming and webinars for you. So let's close the poll and show the results. So as you can see, the great majority of you responded all of the above. And then the next most common answer was demonstrates conformance with the operating rules. These numbers will not add up to 100 since it's a all of the above poll. But Taha, what do you think of this response?
Yep, so I think this kind of aligns with kind of what we hear from other organizations that achieve CORE certification, and that maybe it's not one specific reason, rationale to why an organization may certify. They value all the benefits that certification offers. So it kind of sees a good balance of conformance to the value of every benefit of the certification program.
That's great. So Taha, you're up next for our next segment.
All right. So in my prior segment, I kind of said that I would go deeper dive into kind of more of that certification process and what that looks like and the resources available to kind of help facilitate certification. So that's what I'll be talking about in this section. So next slide, please. So CAQH CORE offers certification to any organization that creates, transmits, or uses healthcare transactions. And our testing process is actually tailored to how your organization processes those transactions. CORE offers certification seals across 4 primary stakeholder types: health plans, providers, vendors, and clearinghouses. So even if you do not traditionally define yourself as one of these stakeholders and conduct the transactions I mentioned, For example, your organization may be a third-party administrator or a pharmacy benefit manager. You actually can achieve certification, and we will work with you to kind of identify which stakeholder type you may align with. For health plans and providers, to become certified on a higher phase of operating rules, such as phase 4 or phase 3, your organization must actually be certified on earlier phases. The core takes a phased approach to developing operating rules, and each subsequent phase of core builds upon each other. So if a health plan or provider, also, I'd like to note, so if you're a health plan or provider and you outsource your requirements to maybe a third-party organization and you don't do those transactions in-house, I'd like to point out that those organizations must be certified as well in order for you to achieve certification. So now I'd like to kind of switch to the vendor and clearinghouse stakeholder type. So certification is more designed to be tailored specific to a specific product or solution that a vendor may have that is seeking to certify. So if you have a product that only touches, for example, the EFT or ERA transactions, you do not have to go through the certification processes for phases 1 and 2. You would just have to complete phase 3 certification for that particular product. So next slide, please. Next up, I'll kind of walk you through the 4 main components of certification and kind of why those components are distinct, and that these components help kind of walk you step by step through the actual process of achieving certification. Component 1 relates to the planning and evaluating of systems prior to beginning the certification process. Component 2 relates to the signing and submission of the core pledge. Component 3 relates to certification testing. And component 4 relates to the application process. And you can actually visit our webpage on the core certification process page, and you can actually navigate to information, materials, and resources that are specific to each component by going to our website, and I'll be kind of talking more about those resources available over the next few slides. So component number 1 outlines the first step an organization needs to take when achieving or considering certification. During the pre-certification and system evaluation phase, organizations should review and understand the requirements of the operating rules and scope resources needed to adopt and implement these rules. The image on the right is a screenshot of content specific to component number 1 on the certification process page. And as you can see on the screenshot, CORE offers a variety of resources to help organizations gauge their ability to adopt and become compliant with the operating rules. A very important resource that CORE offers is the Analysis and Planning Guide. We offer these for every phase, phases 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there is a specific guide for each phase. These guides have separate tools within it, so not only can you do a quick assessment, or you can do simple checks of yes or no in identifying if a general operating rule applies, such as does my organization do real-time or batch. And further, the guides also offer drill-down tools where you can check operating rule requirements line by line, determining whether or not they apply. You know, is it a business impact to my organization or technical impact? And this kind of will help you identify remediation strategies, such as making software changes, business process changes, or even education or communication opportunity, where you may need to engage with other departments with your organization or possibly a trading partner. This is a very important tool that kind of helps map touch points between your systems and business processes to help streamline the implementation of the operating rules, and all of these resources are for free. Moving on to component number 2. This component kind of outlines the steps an organization needs to take when they actually decide to pursue certification. The second component is to sign and submit the core pledge in correspondence to the phase that you're seeking certification for. The intent of the pledge is to formally communicate an organization's commitment to pursue core certification. By signing the core pledge, an organization agrees to be publicly recognized as a supporter of CORE's mission and the operating rules. In addition, the organization is demonstrating commitment to adopt, implement, and conform to the rules. The pledge form can be accessed online or through our new application portal. This application portal allows your organization to submit, complete, sign, and track all required forms online, making the application process for certification automated and streamlined. When completing the pledge, it's helpful to know that the pledge form must be signed by an executive level employee from your organization, typically someone at the C-suite level. And once the pledge form is signed and submitted to CORE, organizations must complete certification testing within 180 business days. And a sample of the CORE pledge form is on your screen. So moving on to component number 3, this component kind of outlines the steps needed to take when undergoing certification testing. This component outlines and provides resources to help organizations navigate the testing process, and we'll hear more about what this testing process looks like from Edifex later today. So I won't spend too much time on this. Let's move on to component number 4. This component outlines the different steps an organization needs to take when actually applying for the seal. So this is when they've completed testing and they're ready to actually go for the CORE seal. And with this component, it involves completing 3 sets of documents for each phase that they're applying. The first is to complete a CORE seal application form, which involves filling out contact and stakeholder-specific information for your organization. A HIPAA attestation form involving that an organization attests that it is compliant with all applicable HIPAA provisions. Like the CORE pledge form, the HIPAA attestation form must be signed by an authorized executive from your organization. And lastly, there is a course certification fee based upon a stakeholder-specific fee scale, and this fee is a one-time cost for each phase of certification that you're seeking. So at the end, once we receive kind of all these forms, your test results, the pledge, what we do is then we start reviewing your application, all the materials that you've submitted for your organization. And during this review, we do a very thorough and comprehensive review. And once everything checks out and everything looks good, we then award and distribute the CORE seal. So next slide, please. So I would say this slide, if you take it offline, this slide can be used as a great cheat sheet as it provides quick links to available resources that other organizations have found helpful through the certification process. I'd like to point out that CORE staff are available by phone or email, so if you have any questions related to the certification, please feel free to reach out to us, and we would be glad to help set up some time to talk to you. So that's what I have for this section, and I'll pass it along to Jessica for the next polling question.
Again, thank you very much, Taha, for those presentations. I'm going to go through 2 polling questions fairly quickly because I'd like to get to our next speaker from Edifex to hear what he has to say. So polling question number 2. So the question is, what stage of certification is your organization currently in? And it is also a select all that apply poll. So option 1 is information gathering. Option 2, organizational buy-in. Option 3, system remediation. Option 4, resource allocation and project planning. And then the 5th option, please click on that if you're either in the process of pursuing certification, which means that you've signed the pledge and you're in the process, or you're already CORE certified. So let's launch the poll and just take a couple of seconds to see where people are. And we'll give this a couple of seconds, and I don't think we're going to take comments, but I'll share the results, and then we'll move on to the next polling question. So let's give it 5 more seconds. I think we're seeing some pretty strong trends already. So let's share the results. And for the 61% of you who say information gathering, I'm glad you're here with us today. That's exactly where you should be. Hopefully, we're giving you some useful information. And for the 24% of you who are either CORE certified or you're in the process of certification, we always like to have our repeat customers. And again, hopefully this is helpful information for you. So let's move on to the next polling question. And this is another select all that apply question. And it is, what resources or tools were or would be most beneficial to your certification planning? And it's a select all that apply. The first is the analysis and planning guide. A second is a consultation with staff to hear your specific questions or concerns. The third are e-learning modules. We have several on the website and are happy to develop more if that would be helpful. The 4th option are decision-making templates, and we also have some online that can be helpful to you as you talk to your executives, for example. And finally, other. So if there's something that we're not doing but that is a need and would be helpful, please put it on the questions panel. It would be something that would be very helpful to us. So let's launch the poll. And this is a way for us to take a pulse and kind of see if what we're doing is right or we should be putting resources into something new. So let's give this a few more seconds, maybe 5 more seconds, and then we'll share the results. So let's go ahead and share the results. And we can see that 74% of you are using or would like to use more decision-making templates, so we hear you. And then there's a tie between the analysis and planning guide and then the e-learning module. So we are glad that those are helpful, and we will continue to work with those. And then for those of you, the 23% of you who said consultation, please call us, please email you. We are more than happy to talk to you and answer any of your questions. So let's go get along with our next presentation, which will be on the value of certification beyond testing. And we are very happy to welcome our guest speaker, Sergio Rata, who is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at EdFX. Sergio, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Jessica. So I'll spend just a few minutes talking about not only the benefits of the certification, but some of the things you should pay attention that during testing phase, and also some of the things that people sometimes overlook even beyond testing. So please go to next slide. So I'll be talking, I want to step back a little bit and still talk about some of the value points. Taha has already mentioned some of them. You have heard there is core phase 4, and some of you may have already certified on previous phases. So for looking and working with customers, we gathered that getting core phase 4 certification is just basically a natural progression. If you already spend time and resources, it's very little incremental remediation that you need to do to achieve core phase 4. So that's just a natural thing to do. Course phase 4 actually also from health plan perspective, it's a very good thing to do because it will streamline the trading partner communication. It will give you more transparency into what's going on internally with transaction processing. So making things to anything that will make it easier to do business with you is going to be a very good thing. And of course, that will also streamline your efforts in regards to onboarding trading partners. So that should save some costs on that side as well. Getting core certification gives health plan competitive advantage. So even though some of the benefits may be benefiting providers, but the health plans that take steps to become core certified, they're basically easier to work with. They offer better services to the provider and trading partner community, which in the end provides better service to their members. So anything that the health plan is doing directly or indirectly to help providers is actually indirectly helping themselves. And they are just making their brand more solidly on the marketplace and solidifies their position. Specifically on one of the aspects of the phase 4 is the claim processes standardization. One of them is the claim acknowledgement. I know there are still health plans out there that don't support that, but standardizing that is one of the key aspects that will help providers to better get the status of the claims. Of course, it's a timely status of the claims, and there is a direct benefit to the health plans even on the internal process, such as even support calls. There is also currently there are all kind of proprietary processes that deal with generating proprietary reports. So by standardizing all those processes, there is going to be significant, we believe there's going to be significant cost reduction in those areas. And of course, I mentioned that reducing phone calls, minimizing those, providing better service to the providers and clearinghouses, trading partners, that's all a very good, very beneficial aspect. So we believe all in all, there is just enough ROI to just take the next step and move on to the core phase 4. Next slide, please. When we talk about the core certification in general, people usually think about the assessment phase where they have to assess internal systems, what they need to be remediated, and they go to the remediation process, and Taha has outlined lots of materials that are available to help you with these steps. And then after the remediation phase is complete, it is very valuable to go through a testing phase where a third party can basically assess whether you have successfully remediated. And a lot of organizations kind of stop here, and they don't realize that usually testing is just a kind of a point-in-time activity, and what really is required is a continuous monitoring of the certification. Basically, as you know, nothing is static. There is software updates, there is internal processes change. So even though maybe if organization went through the certification testing, at some point in time, there is still chance that afterwards, later on, as landscape changes, software changes, internal processes change, there is a risk that the organization may come out of being non-core certified anymore. So the need for the monitoring is also key. And of course, like I said, because of the benefits that I outlined in the previous slide, it is important to be able to keep on monitoring. And what the side benefit of the monitoring is giving you that it is a continuous cycle. So after you perform this continuous monitoring, and if you observe that there is some issues, then you start kind of again, you assess what is broken, then you fix it, and then you may go again through testing if needed, and keep on monitoring this. So we believe that this is should not be a point in time, it should be a continuous process that the organization should go through. Next slide. So let's talk about testing. Taha mentioned materials available for assessment and for remediation, and ADFX is a core certified testing vendor. We offer a free service, testing service to any organization that is seeking core certification. It's really easy to find it. It's on our ADFX website. You see a screenshot where it's located, and you'll just basically go to core phase 1 to 4, and you'll click on the core login. It's a web-based tool. You don't have to install anything. It's available 24/7, and we also offer free support for any issue resolution that you may have related to core testing. Can you go to next slide? So once you get in inside it's a very easy to use website. We have lots of educational material, instructions, down to the kind of, this is the steps you have to go through, how it is going. So really self-explanatory, usable process. And like Taha mentioned, by now we'll have certified hundreds of organizations. So we've been streamlining this website to the maximum extent possible to make it life easy for wishing organizations that want to become core certified to go through this process as quickly and efficiently as possible. Go to the next slide. Some of the materials, here you can see an example of manual you can download from the core certification testing website. It outlines step by step what you need to do, how do you approach the testing process, very detailed. This document has been evolving over the years based on the direct feedback from customers that have already went through the certification. So At this point, we believe it's a very mature, solid document that you should definitely be looking at and make yourself familiar with to just make sure that this process is just as streamlined and easy as possible. Next slide. On the next slide, you can see some of the screenshots of how the certification process or testing process internally is organized. On the left-hand side, you can see it's actually a list of steps or tasks that you as an organization have to complete. Again, we took out the guesswork out of the equation. You just go task by task, step by step, and you complete those. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of this kind of task where you have to submit a transaction, and the system will consume the transaction, will analyze it, will tell you that whether this transaction conforms to the core rules. So again, it's very easy to use, intuitive, streamlined. We try to make it as easy as possible, eliminating the guesswork out of this process. Next slide, please. So I talked about testing, very easy to use, but as you move into beyond testing, you have to, like I mentioned, you have to go to the monitoring. So here's an example. If a payer wants to monitor all the live production data that has been exchanged with providers, maybe through a clearinghouse, it may go to the backend systems. What we do is we sit kind of in the middle, and a copy of all the transactions are being reported to this monitoring module. And what this module does not interfere with your production flow. It's not introducing any delays. It's just kind of like a copy of everything that is going to the production flow. It's been sent to the system, and this system then, based on the transactions that it sees, it basically monitors adherence to the core rules. And one of them could be SLA, the other could be whether you're responding properly to those transactions. So all those rules that from phase 1 to phase 4 are automatically checked, and they are being displayed on a nice dashboard. Can you go to the next slide, please? So here you can see an example of how this, we call it executive dashboard or compliance summary. This dashboard is broken down into phase 1 and 2, phase 3 and phase 4. And for each transaction that is part of that phase, you can see exactly the status, how many percentage of transactions that adhere to the rules and how many don't. We have broken down by batch, acknowledgements, responses, and also by real time. So we look at all these different aspects as it relates to the core rules. And this gives you a very simple to understand, easy to use monitoring tool that you have to periodically check on and see that everything is fine. You see on this specific screenshot, most of the things are okay, but there are a few things where, there are some reds that people kind of need to work on. And this monitoring tool allows you to drill down into more details, and you can find out exactly what's happening, what's going on, and so on. In addition to this kind of dashboard, the monitoring tool also allows you to monitor your data content errors. Also the AAA, how do you report usage of AAA 271s. We also allow you to monitor the array and FT associations, also the usage of CARC and RARC codes, and whether you comply with some of the CARC-RARC data content rules. So this is a comprehensive monitoring tool that can spot any kind of problems related to the core compliance. So we believe it's a very powerful tool that you should have in your arsenal to be able to continuously monitor to see, which goes beyond testing, that you can use to continuously monitor and assess the health of your core compliance. Can you go to the next slide? So I mentioned that this tool not only monitors but allows you to assess the problem areas, because it has rich drill down capabilities, so it can quickly pinpoint not only the areas but exactly down to the transaction level, which transaction has violated core rule, and it's a great troubleshooting tool for you to quickly create your assessment as to what is broken and what is needs to be remediated. Can you go to next slide? And of course, then we help with the remediation process. We have also kind of out-of-the-box processing if that is what is necessary. Or using this monitoring tool, you can actually monitor your remediation process because it is a continuous loop, feedback loop. As you remediate, you can monitor on the your changes, and you can really make sure that yes, the remediation went through successfully, or there's still gaps left. So we believe it's an essential tool not only to monitor but also to assist you with the assessment and remediation phases of the core certification lifecycle. Next slide. I think with that, I've gone through my part of the webinar.
Thank you, Sergio. That was really informative, and we really appreciate you being with us today. And since we do have our subject matter experts with us, Sergio and Taha, and we're also joined by two additional subject matter experts from EDIFEX, Ashish Gandhi, who's a Senior Technical Project Manager, and Christina Puskas, who is a Senior Product Analyst, Smart Trading for EDIFEX. We thought it would be useful for our audience if we went through a dialogue with them and tried to hone in on some of the top challenges that people might experience and other ways that we can troubleshoot and cover topics of interest. So my first question is for Ashish, who, as I just presented him, he's a Senior Technical Project Manager. So Ashish, Sergio just walked us through the core certification testing platform. What would you say is the biggest technical obstacle that you see with organizations who are going through certification testing?
Yeah, thank you, Jessica, and Sergio for the useful information. Yeah, so biggest challenge that I see, we have been supporting multiple organizations for more than 8 years now. And the biggest technical challenge that they face while testing is setting up the connectivity. I think that is the biggest pole in the tent. There are core recommendation rules which specifies what type of connectivity protocols you should set up. And there are test cases which test that network layers as well as application layers. So that's where I think before coming for testing, I would suggest use some third-party tool from outside your network to ensure you are able to connect properly and able to submit the request and response within the SLAs. So that's one of the challenges or the time-consuming tasks that you might face on the testing side. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. So a follow-up question on that for Taha. Are there any best practices or things to think about to help overcome some of these technical challenges with core certification?
Yep. Yes. So there are a few key steps that organizations should consider if they're experiencing technical challenge. And one of the most common ones that she's mentioned is kind of overcoming some of those connectivity layers with certification and with testing. My first recommendation would be to kind of utilize that analysis and planning guide that I mentioned earlier. This tool can help you locate potential areas that may have technical impacts. That way you evaluate those early in the process, and you can appropriately plan remediation strategies before certification. And another important resource is the FAQs offered by CORE. We have several hundred over our website, and we have FAQs related to each specific operating rule. And these FAQs come from organizations that have implemented and gone through the certification process, the real-world questions that we've gotten, and tried to provide to a broader audience in a general Q&A format. So those are two tools that I would definitely recommend organizations checking out if they're experiencing technical challenges.
That's great. And so we just talked a little bit about the technical challenges. Let's move on to stakeholder identification challenges. One question for you, Taha. So we learned about the 4 types of seals that CAQH Core offers. Could you speak to our audience members who may be uncertain which core seal to apply for and how their seal designation may impact their testing?
Yes. So it's very, I would say from the beginning to properly identify the stakeholder type you are early in the certification process as you're going through the implementation process and testing experience. And the reason is that because testing and certification is specific to the stakeholder type you are and how your organization processes those transactions. So for example, if you're a vendor, and it's important to know whether you're a health plan facing vendor or maybe a provider facing vendor. And a helpful way is, to know if you're acting as an information source or information requester. And depending on the end of the spectrum you are, you can then look at the what's called the core test suite, which is a resource that will help your organization determine the stakeholder types and walk you specifically through those testing tasks aligned with your stakeholder. And also that test suite kind of has, there's a table in it that has the numerous amounts of different organizations and how it then funnels back up into a decision tree to the broader core skill. So that's a good resource that you can use to identify your stakeholder.
So I have a follow-up question on that for Ashish. So Ashish, how does the core certification testing platform accommodate stakeholder-specific testing requirements for core certification?
Yep. The Edifex CAQH core testing portal, as Taha touched upon, has during registration has a built-in intelligence where during registration, once you select your stakeholder types, it has a decision tree. So based on your decision, it will apply those test cases, relevant test cases to you only. It will not have any non-applicable test cases in your list. So it will be very easy once you select the correct stakeholder type. It will just give you that specific test cases, and the tool will ensure that we only report those test cases to CAQH for certification, and then thereafter it's very easy. Once you have only applicable test cases, it's very easy navigation to complete the certification. Thank you.
That's great. That's great, Ashish. It's good to know that it's somewhat customized for the stakeholder type. So now I'd like to move on to another, kind of area that's challenging for people as they go through certification, and that's training partner alignment. So my first question is for Taha. So are there any best practices or things to think about when an organization outsources some of the operating rule requirements to either a vendor or a clearinghouse?
Yep. So I would say this is a very critical question to kind of ask yourself at the beginning of the process when you're going through that system evaluation and pre-planning phase. As it's important to know, how those operating rule requirements align, whether or not you do them in-house, whether maybe you might do a connectivity or you might exchange data content with a clearinghouse or a third party. So it's important to kind of recognize where those business and operating rule requirements lie. And the gap analysis tool can help provide you with those remediation strategies and how to identify, where exactly those components lie. And the reason why it's important, so if you have outsourced the operating rule requirement to maybe a third party, a vendor, or clearinghouse, and that organization is not core certified, that third party actually has to achieve certification before your organization can achieve certification. So that element is very important because we want to make sure that the transaction flow downstream is conformant to the operating rules as possible, which is why we have that requirement. But on the flip side, I would like to note that, if you have a third-party vendor or clearinghouse that you've outsourced to, and they've already achieved certification, this actually makes the certification process much easier for you, as you're actually able to leverage their certification seal and bring that with you through the testing and application process, which in return kind of streamlines and reduces your time, effort, and the resources that your organization needs to complete the certification process. If you'd like to know, maybe you don't know if your vendor or clearinghouse has completed certification, you can actually visit our website for a complete list.
Thank you, Taha. And on a kind of a similar note, I have a follow-up question for Ashish. So how does the core certification testing platform accommodate those instances when an organization has outsourced the operating rule requirements to a third party or another entity?
Yeah, I think this is very common scenario in the healthcare industry. So we face a lot of entities, organizations which ask for this question. And as Taha touched upon, right, if you have a vendor whom you have outsourced your transactions to, so core certification testing platform actually give you a flexibility where you can provide a rational statement that you have outsourced this process to some testing vendor. and we'll take that rational statement and validate with the CAQH team that the entity actually is course certified, and then you're not supposed to pass that test cases, and that test cases will be passed by that rational statement easily. Thank you.
That's really helpful to know. So a similar question on trading partner alignment, but on a different topic, Taha. What should a stakeholder do if they discover that one of their core certified trading partners is non-compliant with the operating rules? So they were,
yep.
Now they're not. So what should they do?
So if you believe your trading partner may be non-compliant, CAQH Core has an enforcement mechanism in place to help kind of monitor and engage dialogue with non-compliant trading partners that are certified. And this enforcement policy is a key tool. I briefly talked about it earlier in the presentation. And we have kind of two key tools that kind of help kind of guide that conversation to help bring that organization back to compliance. The first tool is we have an enforcement letter template that actually helps initiate your organization, initiate and guide an enforcement conversation with that trading partner in question. And if that letter doesn't work and the conversations don't go as well, we actually have a formal complaint process where CAQH Core can help mediate and steer remediation efforts. And lastly, if that organization still fails to comply, Core has the ability to actually revoke that organization's seal. And also, I'd like to highlight that we're actually in the process of building out a dedicated web page for enforcement. So that way you have access to all the tools that I've mentioned in one spot.
And we'll make sure when that website becomes available, we'll make sure to announce it during one of our webinars. So I'd like to change topic one more time to kind of another area that's of importance to our audience, and that's application process and resource allocation. And so my next question is for Christina. So Christina, is there a fee to use the EDIFEX Core Certification Testing Portal, and what sorts of resources does EDIFEX provide with the certification testing?
So as Sergio mentioned, the testing of EDIFEX Core Certification Portal is totally free of charge. There is no fee for testing of core rules phase 1, 2, 3, or 4. Testing portal is available 24/7 throughout the year. Additionally, in case testing organization needs any assistance or face any issue, they can log a ticket on the portal in the issue section, and they can refer to Quick Start Guide, or they can write to info.corecertification@edifex.com for any query. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. So this will end the dialogue portion. I want to point out we will not go through these slides, but there are some slides following this that will be something that will be a resource for you that you can go back to. But I'd like to take a minute of your time to go through one more polling question. And again, this is information that helps us provide resources to you. So the fourth and final polling question is, what are the biggest obstacles to pursuing core certification? Again, select all that apply. Option 1, resource allocation. Option 2, leadership or executive buy-in. Option 3, vendor contractor not certified. Option 4 is understanding the requirements of the operating rules and of certification. And option 5 is, again, other. And if you have any comments or something to add there, please put it on the questions panel. So let's launch this poll. And again, it selects all that apply. We want to hear what your biggest obstacles are. And this is whether you've already core certified, you're in the process of certifying, or you're thinking about core certifying. So let's give this a few minutes, because I want to at least be able to spend a little bit of time on Q&A. So let's 5 more seconds, and then we'll share the results. Okay, so let's share the results. And so I see that the largest majority, 47%, the biggest obstacle is understanding the requirements. So hopefully these webinars are useful. We will keep having these types of webinars and also giving you other tools so that you can understand the requirements. And then we've got a tie between resource allocation and leadership and executive buy-in. So this is good to know, because we can think about what kind of resources we might need to create. And then the last one is vendor contractor not certified. So thank you for weighing in on this. And so let's go to the Q&A portion of our webinar. I'd like to remind you to please submit your questions by typing them onto the questions panel on your dashboard. So let's look at the questions. So the first question, this is probably just a quick clarification. So it's, would a hospital need to certify? Taha.
So certification is open to any providers, health plans, vendors, and clearinghouses. So if the hospital wants to ensure that, that they're actually being able to achieve and maximize those benefits by the operating rules, they want to ensure that their systems are conforming. I think certification is definitely a great way to demonstrate that and act as that check. So it's not required, but it's good business practice.
Thank you, Taha. So the next two are, I'm going to just make some comments. One is that the presentation is going to be available on our website by the end of the day today, and also by tomorrow the recording of this webinar will be available. So look at that, look for that information shortly. And then the other comment I'll make is that the monitoring tool that was mentioned earlier by EdFX is not free. That there is a charge there, but we did mention a lot of tools that are free. But if you need a little bit of extra help, there are some non-free options available for you. So let's see. I think this is a question for you, Taha, or maybe it's a question for EdFX. So what if it takes longer than 6 months after you sign that pledge?
So the core pledge does require 180 business days to, from signing the pledge to complete testing. But in the event that maybe your organization needs an extension for a little bit period longer, we do grant one-off requests. So if you feel like you're in that situation, feel free to contact us at CORE, and we'd be glad to kind of work with you to kind of work to see what that extension period timeline looks like.
Okay, great. So I think we're done with the Q&A portion of the webinar since we are out of time. So in the next slide, you can see the listing of our next webinars. We hope you'll register and join us. On the 19th, we have a webinar on the CAQH index. And then if you are a core participant, there's a webinar on the 27th on prior authorization. And finally, thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.